Hey, it's Pete. There's a tag that's been going around for a couple weeks, and no one tagged me, which is fine. Never stopped me before. It was created by Randy Ray. It's the Seriously Well Read tag. I just watched Book Chat with Pat's version. She did a great combo with another tag. I'm going to stick to the main one. Maybe I'll do the other tag in a separate video, but I'm going to try and keep this short. Really doing it as a exercise to try and keep my videos shorter. Number one, what book made you take reading seriously? That would be, of all books, Tarzan of the Apes, because I was reading the DC Comics series where I learned that Tarzan was a literary character, and then I went to my school library. They had Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. That's all they had. I read that, as fast as I could read in these days. So this is, I think I was in fifth grade. Then I went to the main library and I saw that they had a few other Edgar Rice Burroughs books. They were in the adult section. I had never been in the non-kids section of the library. I was there by myself. This was in the 70s. You were allowed to leave your parents' side for hours and hours at an end. So we would walk to the library, me or my brother or me alone, would walk like a half hour to the library and back. So I was alone at the library at the card file, saw that they had Tarzan of the Apes. Was not in the kids section. I had to go to the adult section, and I was terrified they were going to stop me. I didn't know you could go into the adult section as a kid. I was always there by myself, didn't know what the rules work. But I was so desperate to get the book that I did. I'd already learned, don't ask for permission, ask for apologies. So I walked past the main desk. The librarian did not look up. That's how I learned that you could use any part of the library as a kid. So that is that's an early inciting incident that changed my reading. So, number two, what book did you pretend to understand? Be honest. Randy, why would I not be honest? I can't think of any. The closest I can think of to being honest, I can't think of a specific book, but if I had ever done that, it probably would have been my late teens, early 20s to impress some artsy girl. But I can't think of artsy girl or woman. I can't think of ever doing it. That's the only thing I would have ever done. And if I did it, you could see how well it worked out for me. But I can't think of anything. There are books I don't understand. There are books that I don't understand why people like. One of the most mystifying books to me is Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen, I want to say Karen Armstrong, I'm not sure if that's it. Or, because people were just raving about its collection of short stories. I just don't get her stuff, but I never pretended to understand it. In fact, I would love to know what people like about her work. Number three, which three books on your personal required reading list? So, Shakespeare's tragedies, Shakespeare's comedies, Shakespeare's histories. Those would be my three. If I had to do it that way, that's kind of not a fun answer. Other people use the complete works of Shakespeare, so I could count that as one. I would definitely put War and Peace on there too. Which you just got to read. You got to read. It's a fantastic book. It's not a hard book. It's very long. The names are hard. And let me pick an American, I guess, because see, it's hard to limit it to three. I can think of hundreds, but three that are required for everyone to read. The other obvious one would be the Odyssey, or maybe a single volume Odyssey and Iliad together, but for years and years, I liked the Iliad more. I think I read the Odyssey more often. Let's just leave it at that. What author have you been avoiding? Okay, I'm going back to number three, personal required reading list. If I had to narrow it down for Shakespeare, which makes it more fun, I would choose the two parts, Henry the Fourth, parts 1 and 2. Those are, I think those are mildly underrated. I think you get a full sense of Shakespeare from those two plays. His comedies, which are my favorite. There's tragic elements and history and just a panorama of characters. So I would say Henry the Fourth, 1 and 2, War and Peace, and the third one I will let you pick for yourself, or Lonesome Dove. There's so many I could pick. That's the problem. What author have you been avoiding? I avoid a lot of French authors because in my mind, when I was young, I really wanted to learn to read in French, so I used that kind of as an excuse to avoid most of Balzac. I did read a little, and Proust, and I probably should stop doing that because it's probably not going to happen. The French reading, I mean. Still have it in the back of my mind, though. I'm still studying it a little bit. Also have been avoiding Trollope because I feel like that's a big project. And once I feel like I should finish Dickens first. What's the hardest book you've ever finished? Okay, this will be my most controversial one. People are going to go, what? The two hardest books I ever finished, and these were both when I was one when I was in school, and that was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was just the worst slog I've ever put myself through. I had friends who really liked Tolkien who said, well, you should just skip ahead to Lord of the Rings. It's much better. But I had this sort of pedantic, well, not really pedantic, but just this sort of like mind virus that I had to read the books in order. And I had to read The Hobbit before I could read Lord of the Rings. It was so painful getting through The Hobbit. It's like the dullest book I'd ever read. Never tried it again. I remember reading that last chapter just as pure torture to try and get through that stupid book. And years later, I read Lord of the Rings, and I did like it okay. It's not my kind of fantasy. I like sword and sorcery. I don't like Chosen One kind of fantasy stuff. I never have. My favorite serious fantasy books would be the Gormenghast books by Mervyn Peake. Maybe I'll put those on my personal canon to you, or The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I'm going to put that in my 3 books. T.H. White's The Once and Future King, Henry IV, 1 and 2, and War and Peace. Okay, so the hardest book was The Hobbit. The second hardest book was Pride and Prejudice. For similar reasons, I was probably about 18 or 19 when I read it. I was trying to read a lot of classics, as many as I could. It was just painful to get through. I did not care about the characters. I watched a mini-series to try and get through it. It took me weeks and weeks to finish that 250-page book. However, I did read it again last year, and I loved it. So just changing, it just wasn't the right time for me to read it. It just wasn't the kind of situations and things I cared about, but I love the book. Now, I thought it was wonderful when I read it a year and a half ago, or maybe it was more recent than that anyway, so I'm not going to do that with The Hobbit. I'm not going to go back and try and read The Hobbit to see if I would like it better now. That ship has sailed. What's a book that changed how you read? Okay, that's the Deptford trilogy by Robertson Davies, which I read maybe 10 years ago now. But it was kind of a big turning point in my late reading because I was working a lot at the time and had a couple jobs and mostly reading just easy books or, a lot of crime and a lot of crime mostly, which I still read today and I still love it. It's probably my favorite genre. But they're very deep, well-written books. The Deptford trilogy, that's the one that's what's the first one called? Doesn't matter. Deptford trilogy, Robertson Davies. Powerful series of books about the small town of Deptford in Canada and a couple of people, and their whole lives together. It's a very well-written book, sort of touching on magical realism. And it was so good. It was just like such good food. None of his other books really compare to it. All his other books are worth reading. The only one I haven't read is his final novel because I have a hard time reading somebody's last novel if I've read all their other books because I want to have something left. But I'll probably read that sometime. But it taught me the value of still reading good books and ambitious books and all that, even when you don't have a lot of time for reading, as I didn't then, and just to keep exploring and keep growing as a reader, because the books were kind of tough compared to what I'd been reading at the time. Um, but so well written. I don't hear them talked about that much on channels. So maybe I should try and do a Robertson Davies video at some point, or I'll search for YouTubers who've talked about it. But I just can't. These books are indescribably good. The Deptford Trilogy by Robertson Davies. Um, okay, so number 7, quality versus quantity. Would you rather read 100 good books a year or 10 great books? So I've been keeping track of my reading since 2011. So when I started writing things down, mostly so I could remember what I've read, because like I said, I've read a lot of crime books at the time, and sometimes it's useful to remember, when you read so many, sometimes you forget that you've read them, or what titles, and that was more of an issue when I was buying a lot of books. I hated to buy books, again, that I'd already read and sold back. This is kind of how I started it. And also, as anybody has found, has tried to keep track of their exercise or their calorie intake or whatever. Things do improve when you keep track of them. So why'd I get into all that? Oh, so I read about 150 books a year, and I was doing that even when I was working, and even now that I'm retired, I'm still not reading many more books. Even though I have a channel, I'm still reading about 150 books a year. So my answer might be surprising, but I would definitely rather read 10 great books a year than 100 good books. So there's maybe I'm being pedantic in the way I'm taking this question seriously, but how am I going to know what the 10 great books are unless I read more than 10 books? But this question kind of presumes, in my mind, that you're guaranteed that these 10 books are great. And it's hard to find really great books. It really is. You have to read a lot of just okay books, or a lot of books that are considered great that just don't work for you for whatever reason, because of the time of your life or different things you're not interested in. So the only way to guarantee you read 10 great books a year is to read 10 books you've already read and consider great. I don't want to do that. But if, like a magic genie said, these are going to be 10 books that are going to be great versus 100 good, I would take the 10 great, because I'm always looking for great books. It's the most satisfying part of reading to mine, is finding something that's really, really great. Like the Deptford Trilogy. Which genre are you embarrassed to say you have not read? I don't think I'm embarrassed of a genre. Let's say dark academia. I haven't read Donna Tartt or any of those kind of things that came afterwards. I didn't go to college, so those books don't immediately call to me. Another way to think of it would be like by region or something. I'm embarrassed that I have read no Chinese literature, nothing contemporary, almost nothing contemporary, maybe a couple of short stories that were translated in the New Yorker when I had a subscription or something, or like now I want to read To Live. I'm not even sure of the author's name. I've read, of course, those science fiction 3-body problem books, but I haven't read the classics of Chinese literature, like The Dream of a Red Chamber, aka Story of Stone. I'm embarrassed that I haven't read any of that stuff. But would you call it a genre? I wouldn't myself, but it's just another way to attack the problem, I guess. Okay, 13 minutes, not bad. Which book do you think most people misread? Well, there's a few, and I have to put the caveat and that I might be the one misreading them, but I think most people misread. And this is a great part of Pat's version of this. Had an answer to this question that blew my mind, something I never knew when I read the book that she discusses there. So definitely watch that if you haven't. So Lolita, most people misread, I think. I think they think it's a book of erotica, or meant to be erotica, or Humbert Humbert is a stand-in for Nabokov, or it's a pro-pedophilia book or something like that. It's pretty... I don't really understand how people can make that mistake. I think a lot of people have read about the book or heard about the book, and they just assume that's the case because it's fun for them to find something to condemn. It's not like that at all. Also, same author, Pale Fire. Some people seem to misunderstand that book too, in thinking that the narrator, this is a spoiler alert, that the narrator and annotator of the epic poem in it is telling the truth or is not insane. I'm surprised by that one, frankly, that people think that. There was one more that people misread, or maybe I'm misreading it. I feel like, well, maybe it's more like the author miswrote it, The Stranger. People seem to think that the character is cool or something, and that they relate to the character, but I think he's just it's a good book. Don't get me wrong; it's a fascinating book to read. People don't see any racism in it, which I think is odd. Is that because it's French, so it can't be racist? If an American author wrote the same book about the person doing the same things, and the person's attitudes towards the Arabs in the book, the main character, the French colonial characters, and maybe I've just missed all the discourse on that. It seems like people think don't even consider that part of it, that part of his character. So there's the books that seems like people misread a lot, or maybe I'm misreading them. What does seriously well read mean to you? It means, I don't know what it means. I think this is going to require its own video. The most well-read people I can think of are St. Augustine. Not sure how to pronounce it. I've heard it both ways. I always said Augustine, but lately I've heard Augustine, which kind of sounds better. Sir Thomas More. It seems like the people are considered extremely well read, and of course they haven't written anything that's been written in hundreds and hundreds of years. So, but they read the classics, I suppose. It seems like both of them would have read every important classic that existed at the times they lived. But they haven't read War and Peace. They haven't read Moby Dick. Required reading, Moby Dick. Shakespeare, Moby Dick. See, you can't do the 3 books. So it really means nothing to me. You're seriously well read because you can... what does seriously well read mean to you? Okay, it means to me that you are Steve Donahue. Consider yourself tagged.